The cabin went dead quiet the second the captain's voice cracked through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this flight is no longer cleared for departure. Everyone remain seated. Do not stand. A baby stopped crying. A coffee cup trembled in a passenger's hand. Before anyone could process the order, two men in dark suits appeared at the front, badges flashing silver under the cabin lights. Then came the second blow. One of them leaned toward the cockpit and spoke just loud enough for the first row to hear, "Bring the young passenger from seat 1A to the front. Now." Every head snapped toward first class. Seat 1A. A teenager. Phones tilted. Someone whispered, "Is this a terrorist thing?" Another hissed, "He's just a kid." And there, frozen against the wide leather seat, sat a tall black teen in a black hoodie, eyes locked on the aisle as an agent pointed directly at him. What could a 17-year-old possibly have done to make the captain halt a fully boarded flight and call in federal agents? Have you ever watched a room turn against you before you even speak? Hours earlier, this moment didn't exist. The plane was just another flight from Atlanta to San Francisco. The boy in seat 1A, Jordan Price, was supposed to be asleep by now, dreaming of venture deals and late-night coding sessions. Instead, he was staring down 2 federal badges and 100 strangers who suddenly looked at him like a headline. Back in the terminal, nothing about the night screamed danger. Jordan had glided through security like any first-class traveler, earbuds in, boarding pass ready. He'd earned this ticket the hard way. Months of pitching investors, sleepless nights building a tech company most adults couldn't even imagine. But here, in the sealed air of Flight 287, none of that mattered. All anyone saw was a black kid in a hoodie sitting where they thought he didn't belong. The captain's next words cut through the whispering crowd. "This is an operational necessity. We appreciate your discretion." Operational necessity. Discretion. Polite corporate language hiding something bigger. Jordan's pulse thundered in his ears. He glanced at the exit, then back at the agents now moving toward him. One reached into his jacket. Slow, deliberate. Passengers shifted, phones raised higher. Somewhere behind him, a woman gasped. Jordan swallowed hard, gripping the armrest. He had no idea that hours of quiet airport waiting had led to this single command. No idea that the truth behind this random stop would shake not just the cabin, but the entire airline. The taller agent stopped 2 feet from his seat, eyes locked on Jordan's. "Mr. Price," he said, voice flat but loaded with urgency. "You need to come with us. Now." Jordan looked up, the weight of 100 stairs pressing down. He stood, every muscle tight. And that's when the loudspeaker crackled again, this time with a voice he did not expect to hear. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson airport pulsed like a restless heart that night. Rolling suitcases clicked against polished floors, the smell of roasted coffee mixed with jet fuel, and the PA system echoed with boarding calls that rose and fell like sudden waves. Into that swirl of motion stepped 17-year-old Jordan Price, calm, sharp, and just a little electric, like someone who already knew his name would matter one day. His black hoodie looked simple, but the quiet confidence behind his eyes made people glance twice. No one rushing past him could have guessed the truth. On his phone, a single screen glowed. First class, seat 1A. A ticket bought with his own corporate card, paid for by months of grinding late nights and investor calls. But to the strangers sliding their eyes over him, he was just another black teen traveling alone, a hoodie and sneakers in a space that loved business casual. Jordan kept his pace steady as he crossed the terminal. His phone buzzed with corporate alerts, emails from investors, a meeting reminder in San Francisco, a security notice he barely skimmed. Behind every ping was the multimillion-dollar company he built from a dorm room, a fact no one in the terminal knew. He liked it that way. Anonymity meant freedom. Or so he thought. The airport around him whispered small signals of hidden power. A gate announcement mentioned operational necessity. A uniformed pilot laughed softly with a crew member as they passed, eyes sliding toward Jordan for half a second too long. A group of businessmen in tailored suits paused at the same Starbucks line, their conversation dipping when Jordan stepped closer. Nothing said out loud. Nothing obvious. Just the kind of small, sharp microaggressions that float like static until they cut. Still, Jordan walked on, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. He focused on the next move, the first-class lounge, the gate, the quiet triumph of settling into seat 1A while the world guessed wrong about him. But a flicker on his phone pulled at his focus. Another alert, this one stranger, colder. Account security check in progress. Please verify recent activity. He frowned, thumb hovering over the screen. Before he could tap, the PA system overhead crackled. A burst of static followed by a boarding call that carried his flight number. His gate was closer than he expected. And standing beside it, framed by the bright glow of the departure board, was a gate agent with a flawless airline smile, watching him. Her eyes locked on his just for a breath too long, before she looked away like nothing had happened. Jordan's chest tightened. Was it nothing? Or the first move in a game he didn't know he was already playing? The first-class sign glowed like a promise at the end of the carpeted lane. Jordan adjusted the strap of his backpack and stepped forward, phone in hand, ticket ready. He had earned this moment. Seat 1A, the quiet front of the plane where deals are made and whispers carry weight. But as he moved closer, a sudden hush fell around the gate. Eyes flicked toward him, then away as if his presence broke some unspoken rule. The agent behind the podium straightened. Her smile was polished, professional, the kind that hides more than it shows. "Good evening, sir," she said, but her eyes lingered on the black hoodie, the sneakers, the smooth brown face that looked a little too young for the privilege printed on his screen. "This line is for first class only." Jordan lifted his phone so the barcode caught the overhead light. "That's me," he said, calm but firm. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The only sounds were the low rumble of engines outside the window and the soft drag of suitcase wheels behind him. A man in a navy blazer whispered to his companion, just loud enough to reach Jordan's ears, "Must be a mistake." A woman in pearls gave a small shake of her head, lips pressed tight. The agent's fingers danced over the keyboard. Click, pause, click. Her smile never wavered, but her voice dropped half a note. "Let's just recheck your ticket for operational necessity." That phrase, airline code for "we don't believe you," cut sharper than any outright insult. Jordan felt heat rise in his chest. He'd faced investors who doubted his age, bankers who questioned his credit, but this was different. This was public. Every second stretched as the agent typed and frowned, the monitor reflecting cold blue light across her face. Behind him, a passenger sighed loudly, the universal sound of judgment. Another muttered something about random checks. Jordan caught the word random like a hook. Random never feels random when it lands on the same kind of person every time. The agent looked up at last, eyes narrowed just enough to send a message. "One moment, sir. Please step aside while we verify this purchase." Step aside. 2 words that turned an open gate into a wall. Jordan's grip tightened around his phone. He could hear the final boarding call echoing across the concourse. His $1 million meeting waited on the other coast, but here he was, stranded in a spotlight he never asked for. And then, behind the counter, a red alert flashed across the agent's screen. Her smile flickered just once before she reached for the phone. What did she just see that made her call for backup? The keyboard clicks were the only sound Jordan could hear at first, sharp, steady, and cold. The gate agent's manicured fingers danced across the keys while her flawless airline smile never cracked. Overhead, the loudspeaker hummed with boarding calls for other flights, each chime a reminder that his own departure was slipping away. "Sir," she finally said, her voice smooth but edged with something harder, "your ticket has been flagged for possible fraud. We need to recheck your reservation." Fraud. The word sliced through the air like a snapped cable. Passengers behind him sucked in quiet breaths. Someone whispered, "Did he steal it?" Another muttered, "Random checks, happens all the time," but the tone carried doubt, not fairness. Jordan tightened his grip on his phone. "There must be a mistake," he said, keeping his voice calm even as his chest burned. "I paid with my own corporate card. Here, look." He held up the glowing screen, the first-class barcode bright under the terminal lights. The agent didn't glance at it. Instead, she tapped again, eyes flicking between the monitor and Jordan's face. "Please wait. This is an operational necessity." Her choice of words felt like a wall built from polite bricks. Discretion, procedure, experience. A wall meant to keep him exactly where he stood. Behind him, the line swelled with restless travelers. A man in a gray business suit checked his watch and sighed loudly, making sure Jordan heard. A woman clutched her boarding pass a little tighter, as if proximity alone might taint her seat assignment. Phones tilted. Someone filmed. Jordan's mind raced. Every second of delay tightened the noose around his schedule. Missing this flight meant missing the investor meeting in San Francisco, the kind of meeting that could push his company's valuation past the next milestone. All that work, all those sleepless nights, dangling because a stranger didn't believe a black teen could buy his own seat. The agent typed a final command. The screen flashed red. Her eyes narrowed, just a flicker, but Jordan caught it. "Sir," she said, lowering her voice, "please step aside while we verify this purchase. It will only take a moment." Step aside. 2 words that meant step down. Jordan felt the weight of 100 silent judgments pressing against his back. He opened his mouth to protest, but before the words formed, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. 2 uniformed security officers were already walking toward the podium, their pace deliberate, their expressions unreadable. The agent's perfect smile returned as she nodded toward them. "Thank you for your patience," she said softly. "They'll take it from here." The sharp click of the keyboard stopped. For a heartbeat, the whole terminal seemed to inhale. Then the crowd parted as 2 uniformed airport security officers stepped forward, shoes striking the polished floor with heavy, measured taps. No siren, no raised voices, just calm, deliberate movement that somehow felt louder than a shout. One officer, tall and broad-shouldered, gave a short nod to the gate agent. No words were exchanged, only a glance that carried the weight of a silent decision. The agent's perfect airline smile held steady, but her eyes flicked toward Jordan like a signal. "Sir," the taller officer said, voice steady and official, "we need you to come with us for a quick verification." Verification. The word was wrapped in soft professionalism, but everyone in line heard the undertone. Passengers shifted back, a subtle ripple of distance. A man in a navy blazer whispered to his companion. A child clutched her mother's sleeve and stared. Jordan's chest tightened. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" he asked, careful to keep his tone even. "No problem," the second officer replied, though his firm grip on the radio at his belt told another story. "Just a routine check. It's standard procedure. Please bring your phone and ID." Routine. Standard. Operational necessity. Words meant to sound harmless, yet they pressed down like a hidden weight. Jordan felt every stare burning into his hoodie, each one asking the same unspoken question. What did he do? He glanced at the gate agent. Her smile didn't waver, but she avoided his eyes. The first-class sign behind her gleamed like a door now firmly shut. Jordan's mind raced. Every second lost was another step toward missing the meeting in San Francisco, a meeting that could change his company's future. But arguing here, in front of cameras and strangers, could spiral fast. A phone camera light blinked on. Another followed. Whispers turned to soft gasps as the officers flanked him, guiding him away from the boarding lane. Their uniforms brushed against his sleeves, a silent reminder of who held the power in this space. As they led him down a side corridor, the hum of the terminal faded, replaced by the echo of his own footsteps. Somewhere behind him, the boarding announcement for Flight 382 crackled through the speakers. First class now boarding. His seat 1A called for someone else. Jordan swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the sterile hallway ahead. He still didn't know where they were taking him. But when the taller officer pressed a hidden keypad beside an unmarked door and it clicked open with a cold metallic snap, Jordan felt the question claw up his throat. Who was waiting for him on the other side? The security officer's badge gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights as he led Jordan through a side door marked authorized personnel only. The hallway beyond felt nothing like the polished, bustling terminal he had just left. The carpet was thin and gray, the air chilled and dry, humming faintly with the sound of hidden machinery. Jordan's sneakers squeaked with each step, the echo sharp enough to make him feel exposed. They reached a narrow room with a metal desk, a single chair, and a wall clock that ticked louder than it should have. A half-empty water bottle sat on the counter, condensation frozen in place. Everything about the room said temporary detention, though no one used the word. "Have a seat," the officer said, voice neutral but clipped. He remained standing, blocking the door with casual precision. Jordan lowered himself onto the chair, the cold metal biting through his jeans. He set his backpack on the floor and kept his phone in his palm, thumb hovering over the screen. No signal. No bars. Of course. Minutes stretched. The officer typed on a tablet, occasionally glancing at Jordan like he was a puzzle missing its last piece. Jordan fought the urge to speak first. He'd learned long ago that silence sometimes protects more than words. Still, the questions swirled. Why was my ticket flagged? Who called this in? How deep does this go? The door creaked open and another figure entered, a woman in a navy blazer with an airline ID clipped to her lapel. Her heels clicked once against the tile before she stopped, eyes scanning Jordan from sneakers to hoodie. "Mr. Price," she said, her tone polite but sharp enough to cut. "We need to confirm some details about your travel today." Jordan met her gaze. "My ticket's valid. My payment cleared. What details could possibly need confirmation?" The woman hesitated as if weighing how much to reveal. "There are discrepancies on the purchase record." A security protocol was triggered. Her eyes darted to the officer, then back to Jordan. Until we clarify, you're required to remain here. The wall clock ticked again, each second louder than the last. Jordan felt the chill sink deeper, a cold far beyond the room's temperature. Somewhere beyond that door, the flight he paid for was boarding. And someone, unseen, unnamed, was already deciding how far this protocol would go. The door opened with a hiss, and a man in a dark suit stepped inside like he owned the air. His shoes barely made a sound against the linoleum, but the room seemed to shrink as he crossed it. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather case. The gold seal caught the harsh fluorescent light. FBI. Jordan froze. His heart was already beating too fast, but now it felt like the whole room could hear it. The security officers who brought him in stood a little straighter, their silence almost rehearsed. The man placed a slim folder on the metal table, its edges perfectly squared, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. Jordan Price. His voice was low but sharp. Jordan nodded, trying to keep his face calm even as questions raced through his mind. The agent opened the folder and turned it toward him. Inside was a glossy photo. Jordan, smiling, shaking hands with a well-known Silicon Valley investor at a conference just last month. Jordan blinked. Why do you have that? The agent tapped the photo once, a slow, deliberate motion. Your name triggered a high-level alert about an hour ago. Someone tried to break into the financial accounts tied to your company. The attempt came from inside this airport. Possibly, he paused, eyes narrowing, from someone boarding your flight tonight. The words hit harder than the fraud accusation. Jordan felt the floor tilt beneath him. This wasn't about a ticket. Someone was after his company. His future. You're not under arrest, the agent added quickly, almost like an afterthought. But we need to act fast. Whoever is behind this might already be on that plane. Jordan's breath caught. The flight he'd fought to board was suddenly a trap. The agent slid the folder back into his jacket and leaned closer. Stay calm. Do exactly as we say. And don't speak to anyone until we give the signal. Before Jordan could respond, the agent's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression tightening. Without a word, he stepped to the door and waved in another figure, someone Jordan couldn't yet see. And that unseen visitor was about to change everything. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls had quietly moved in while Jordan tried to steady his breathing. The FBI agent stood over the table, phone in hand, his voice clipped and urgent. The alert just escalated, he said, eyes fixed on a string of messages flashing across the screen. Your company's firewall held for now, but the hacker is still active. They're targeting live accounts connected to tonight's flight manifest. Jordan gripped the edge of the cold metal table. What does that even mean? His own voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. It means, the agent replied, someone boarding your plane may have credentials tied to your company. They're trying to drain your accounts before wheels up. He leaned in, lowering his voice. And they might not be working alone. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, matching the thump of Jordan's heartbeat. He had built this company from late nights and cafeteria Wi-Fi, and now a faceless thief was using an airport to rip it apart. Outside the small window, Jordan caught a glimpse of the jet he was supposed to be on. Its nose pointed toward a runway it might not reach. Crew members moved with forced calm while passengers fidgeted, glancing toward the gate that stubbornly stayed closed. The agent's radio crackled. New intel. Possible insider threat. Repeat, insider threat. Jordan's stomach dropped. Insider? You think it's someone from my team? Not necessarily, the agent said, tapping the folder with Jordan's photo. But whoever it is, they had access to confidential investor documents. We need to secure you and the data before the plane moves an inch. A second agent entered, whispering something too fast to catch. The first agent's jaw tightened. The attacker just attempted another breach, this time from inside the terminal. Jordan felt the air thin. Someone within walking distance was trying to destroy everything he'd built, and he was trapped in a side office while the countdown ticked. The agent straightened, eyes sharp. We're taking this to the next level. The airline's senior command has been notified. Expect movement. Before Jordan could ask what movement meant, the door swung open with a sharp metallic click. A tall woman in a tailored navy suit stepped inside, her ID badge gleaming under the harsh lights. Her presence carried the quiet authority of someone used to commanding entire airports. She looked directly at Jordan and said one word that froze the room. "See." The room was heavy with silence when the door opened again. But this time it wasn't another officer or anonymous staff member. It was a man everyone instantly recognized, even if they had never met him before. His tailored suit seemed carved from steel gray authority, his polished shoes clicking against the floor like a gavel striking wood. The airline CEO had arrived in person. Jordan froze. He was only 17, but even he knew what this meant. Ordinary passengers didn't get the CEO's attention, ever. Executives at this level didn't appear at gates unless something had gone terribly wrong. The air shifted, and even the skeptical gate agent seemed to shrink 2 inches as the man's eyes scanned the room. "Hold the flight," the CEO said flatly, not even glancing at Jordan at first. His voice cut through the fluorescent buzz like a blade. An assistant rushed in behind him, phone still in hand, whispering about a federal call. The FBI badge on the table gave his order a shadow of gravity. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about a boarding pass anymore. Only then did the CEO look at Jordan. His gaze lingered on the hoodie, the sneakers, the youthful face. For a moment, it was unclear if he saw a rising star of the tech world, or just another black teenager pulled aside. That hesitation was enough to sting. The gate agent who had stopped Jordan earlier tried to speak. "Sir, the ticket was flagged for." "Flagged?" the CEO snapped, his tone slicing her words in half. "You flagged the founder of a multimillion-dollar company because of what exactly?" Her face flushed crimson, her once perfect smile trembling into silence. The power balance in the room shifted like turbulence mid-flight. Jordan, moments earlier treated like a criminal, was now the center of corporate and federal attention. The CEO tapped the folder the FBI had left on the table. The photo of Jordan shaking hands with a Silicon Valley investor stared back at all of them, undeniable proof of his identity. "This young man is not the problem," the CEO said, low but firm. "He is the priority." Behind him, more staff gathered in the doorway, wide-eyed, trying to process how quickly the ground had tilted beneath their feet. Phones vibrated with urgent texts. The loudspeaker in the terminal called other flights to board, but this gate remained frozen in place as if sealed off from the world. And then the CEO leaned closer to the agent, voice dropping so only those inside could hear. "From this moment forward, treat him as if his safety is more important than mine." The room fell completely still. But Jordan's chest tightened. If the CEO was saying that, what threat was serious enough to put a teenager above the head of an airline? The CEO's final words hung in the air, leaving Jordan and everyone else wondering what danger was still lurking just beyond the gate. The air inside the holding room felt different the moment the CEO finished speaking. A ripple of nervous energy swept across the staff like a silent alarm. Only minutes ago, the gate agent's voice carried authority. Now her posture folded inward, hands fidgeting as if they might disappear. The same officers who had walked Jordan through the terminal with stiff, practiced confidence now avoided his eyes, their clipped professionalism softening into quiet apology. Jordan stayed seated, shoulders square, trying to mask the storm in his chest. He had come to the airport to board a flight, not to expose a security flaw or hold up hundreds of passengers. Yet here he was, a teenager in a hoodie, watching grown professionals scramble to protect him as though he were the one running the airline. "Mr. Price," the CEO said, his tone sharp but respectful, "our priority is your safety. You will board first class as planned, but under discretion. Please allow my team to escort you personally." The word discretion hung in the air like a hidden contract. It was the same corporate language used to justify quiet cover-ups and sudden policy changes. Moments earlier that word might have meant shutting Jordan out. Now it meant shielding him. The gate agent forced a smile and gestured toward the hallway. "This way, sir." Her voice cracked on "sir." Passengers standing near the door whispered to one another, their faces flickering between curiosity and disbelief. Phones rose discreetly, trying to capture a picture of the teenager who had somehow frozen an entire airline schedule. Jordan rose slowly, every movement deliberate. He felt the weight of the stairs, the soft hiss of suitcase wheels against the polished floor, the low rumble of a jet engine idling outside. Each sound sharpened the tension. This was the same walkway where he'd been doubted and delayed. Now it was his runway of quiet vindication. Halfway to the gate, an officer leaned closer and murmured just loud enough for Jordan to hear. "The person they're looking for might already be on board. Stay alert." Jordan's pulse spiked. The hacker, the real threat, was still at large. He tightened his grip on his backpack and glanced toward the jet bridge where the aircraft waited, engines humming like a beast ready to leap. Then came the announcement over the loudspeaker. "Attention passengers on Flight 247. Remain seated until further notice." The entire terminal went still. Jordan's eyes locked with the CEO's. Something was happening on that plane, something the FBI hadn't revealed. A second announcement crackled through the speakers. but the last word cut out mid-sentence, leaving only static and a room full of people holding their breath. The cabin doors stayed sealed, the engines humming a low, restless growl as minutes stretched into uneasy silence. Passengers shifted in their seats, phones buzzing with unanswered texts, whispers bouncing from row to row like static. What began as a routine boarding delay had turned into a floating debate chamber, and Jordan Price, the quiet teenager who had walked in with a first-class ticket, was the subject of every glance. Across the aisle, a businessman in a crisp navy suit leaned toward his seatmate. "This is ridiculous. They're holding the entire flight for a kid with a credit card issue?" His voice carried just enough to invite agreement. A woman in a red scarf shot back before her seatmate could answer. "It's not about a credit card. Did you see the agents? FBI badges don't come out for a billing error." 2 rows back, a college student tapped her phone, recording the low buzz of conversation. "If he were white," she whispered to her camera, "would we even be sitting here?" The businessman scoffed, but his fingers drummed the armrest, betraying nerves. "Rules are rules. You can't just yell racism every time someone checks a ticket." "Rules?" the woman countered, her voice sharp enough to turn heads. "Rules don't explain why the airline CEO is on board. Something bigger is happening." Jordan could hear fragments of every argument without trying, the quiet accusations, the defensive shrugs, the coded phrases passengers used when they didn't want to say race out loud. Each word landed like a small stone in his chest. He had followed every rule, paid every fee, cleared every security check, and still ended up as the spark for a storm he never asked for. A flight attendant moved down the aisle, her forced smile stretched thin. "Please remain seated. We appreciate your patience during this operational necessity." The phrase hung like smoke, careful, corporate, and infuriating. Jordan tightened his grip on the armrest. He wanted to stand to tell them the truth, but the FBI agent's earlier warning echoed in his mind. "Don't speak until we give the signal." Then the PA crackled, sharp enough to cut every conversation in half. The captain's voice came through, tight and urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received new instructions from federal authorities. All passengers must." The speaker cut to static mid-sentence. The cabin lights dimmed to a softer glow, but the air felt sharper, electric. 2 FBI agents stepped back onto the jet bridge and then into the plane, their suits blending with the uniformed crew until you caught the small flash of a badge. No announcement, no apology, just quiet authority that turned every head without a single word. Row by row they moved like a slow tide. Passengers straightened in their seats, phones lowered in trembling hands. A mother clutched her child's backpack a little tighter. The businessman who had argued earlier adjusted his tie twice in 30 seconds. Each motion seemed louder than the steady engine hum that refused to let anyone forget where they were. Trapped in a sealed cabin, nowhere to run. Jordan sat in the first-class seat the airline CEO had insisted he reclaim, heart hammering against the leather headrest. From here he could see the agent's subtle choreography, one scanning eyes and body language, the other checking a tablet glowing with passenger data. Every few rows they paused, leaned in, asked a name, requested a boarding pass. The questions were polite but the subtext was clear. Someone on this plane isn't who they claim to be. A flight attendant followed with a silver service cart, pretending to offer water while quietly collecting discarded napkins and coffee cups. Evidence, not hospitality. Jordan caught the faint scent of burnt espresso and metal as the cart rattled past. Then it happened. One agent stopped beside a young man in a gray hoodie seated near the exit row. His laptop was half closed, screen dark but still warm. The agent's voice stayed calm. "Sir, may we speak with you for a moment?" The man froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard before sliding into his lap. Passengers craned for a better view, the collective inhale almost louder than the announcement chime. Jordan's pulse kicked harder. Was this the hacker? Or just another traveler unlucky enough to look nervous under fluorescent lights? The agent leaned closer, whispering something Jordan couldn't catch. The man in the gray hoodie gave a small, reluctant nod. Before anyone could exhale, the captain's voice cracked through the intercom, tense, hurried, and unfinished. "All passengers remain seated. Federal authorities have." The speaker cut to static, leaving the cabin vibrating with unanswered questions. Engines silent. Cabin lights dimmed to an uneasy glow. The plane sat frozen at the gate like a giant animal refusing to move. Minutes bled into half an hour, then more. The air smelled of coffee cooling and nerves fraying. Fingers drummed on armrests. Screens flashed delayed in sterile blue letters that said nothing and everything at once. Jordan stayed buckled in first class, the same seat he'd been denied only an hour ago. Now every glance carried a different weight, some curious, some apologetic, some still doubting. Across the aisle, a man in a silver business suit checked his watch so often it looked like a nervous tick. He finally snapped. "This is ridiculous," the man barked, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Some kid's ticket problem and the entire flight is held? I have a board meeting in New York." His voice sharpened on kid, slicing the air like a blade. Heads turned. Phones tilted, ready to record. A flight attendant, cheeks tight behind a practiced smile, murmured something about operational necessity. The phrase floated like corporate smoke, polite, empty, final. But the man wasn't done. "If this were a real security threat, we'd be off the plane. Admit it, this is a mix-up and we're paying the price." Whispers rippled through the rows. Some passengers nodded, eager for a villain to blame. Others studied Jordan, measuring his silence. He felt the sting of every half-hidden look. Too young, too black, too successful to be the reason an FBI badge just shut down a multi-million-dollar aircraft. From the galley came the low crackle of a radio. An agent in a dark suit leaned close to the captain, his badge catching the cabin light for a flash before disappearing again. Their voices were muffled, urgent. The captain's jaw tightened. He straightened, eyes scanning the cabin as if taking a silent roll call of threats. Jordan's phone buzzed, one line from his head of security: "Firewall breached again. Someone inside." His stomach dropped. "Inside. Here." Before he could react, the agent stepped forward and bent to the captain's ear. A single whispered sentence. The captain's eyes widened, then locked on Jordan's row. The seatbelt sign blinked back to life with a sharp chime. The captain reached for the intercom. And stopped. The captain's voice cracked through the intercom like a thunderclap. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Federal investigators have just confirmed a serious security breach involving this flight." The cabin froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Coffee cups trembled in suspended hands. Jordan felt the air thicken, every heartbeat pounding like a drumline against the walls of the plane. Two FBI agents stepped into the aisle, their badges glinting beneath the harsh overhead lights. Passengers leaned sideways, necks craning for a better view. A hush rolled from row to row, broken only by the slow rattle of the beverage cart as a nervous flight attendant tried to move it out of the way. One agent carried a tablet, its screen glowing with an image that made Jordan's stomach tighten. A headshot of a man he recognized. The agent's voice was low but sharp. "The intruder attempting to hack Price Technologies has been located. He boarded with a false ID. He is no longer a threat." Gasps rippled through the cabin. A woman clutched her pearls. A businessman whispered, "On this plane?" The agent continued, "The suspect is a former employee tied to a competing investor. He attempted to frame Mr. Jordan Price to gain access to proprietary accounts." Every eye swung toward Jordan. A teenager in a black hoodie, once doubted, now the center of a federal manhunt. The very passengers who had eyed him with suspicion now stared with uneasy respect. Somewhere in the back a man muttered, "All that for a kid?" Then came the power shift no one expected. The jet bridge door cracked open, and a tall woman in a tailored navy suit stepped aboard. The airline CEO. Her heels clicked like a metronome of authority as she marched down the aisle. Without a word to the gate agent who had doubted Jordan, she stopped at his seat. "Mr. Price, please follow me. By direct order of federal security, you will be escorted to first class immediately. Under our protection." Phones shot into the air. Screens glowed as passengers recorded every step of the walk back to seat 1A. The same gate agent who once questioned his right to be there now cleared the path, her perfect smile replaced by a stiff jaw. Jordan passed her without a glance, the sound of cameras clicking like applause and indictment all at once. As he settled into the wide leather seat that had started it all, the cabin seemed to exhale, relief, envy, shame mixing into one heavy breath. But just as the door closed and the engines hummed back to life, an agent leaned toward the captain and whispered something urgent. The captain's brow furrowed. His hand hovered over the intercom switch. What new danger could possibly delay this flight again? The engines finally roared to life, but inside first class the silence was louder than the turbines outside. Jordan sat upright in seat 1A, the same spot he'd been accused of stealing hours earlier. Only now the wide leather chair felt less like a prize and more like a witness. Across the aisle, passengers who once whispered about fraud now stole uneasy glances, their screens glowing with half-typed messages they weren't sure they should send. The FBI agent who had first questioned him offered a brief nod before stepping off the plane. Behind them, the airline CEO leaned down, her voice low but sharp. Mr. Price, our company apologizes for the operational necessity of tonight's delays. Operational necessity. A corporate phrase polished to hide the raw truth. Jordan caught the flicker of discomfort in her eyes, a tiny crack in the mask of discretion. The gate agent who had stopped him earlier remained at the door, holding it open for the crew. Her perfect smile had drained into something closer to regret. She whispered a stiff, safe flight without meeting his eyes. Jordan said nothing. Sometimes silence delivers a sharper lesson than any speech. As the plane taxied toward the runway, the captain's voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Tonight reminds us that every passenger's security and dignity matters. A small pause followed, heavy enough to feel intentional. Heads turned toward Jordan. For the first time all night, he felt the weight of collective recognition. Not pity. Recognition. The cabin lights dimmed. Jordan pulled out his phone and stared at the glowing confirmation of his company's account. Safe, intact, alive. Hours ago, strangers saw a teenager in a hoodie. Now they knew a black CO had been hunted, doubted, and finally defended at 30,000 feet. But the question hung heavier than the plane itself. Would any of this have happened if his skin were a different color? The runway blurred beneath the rising nose of the aircraft. Outside, Atlanta's lights scattered like restless stars. Inside, a quiet victory hummed between the seat rows, carried by the soft engine roar. Jordan leaned back, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. Imagine boarding a flight with proof of success in your pocket and still being treated like a suspect. How many quiet gate checks, coded smiles, and random delays hide stories we'll never hear? This night ended with an apology and a safe takeoff. But how many nights end without cameras, without the FBI, without a CEO forced to act? If this story moved you, drop a comment with the word justice. Hit like to keep it alive and subscribe so you never miss the next true story of hidden power in elite spaces. Your voice and your click send a message that silence will never win.